Welcome back to the Aussie Shed, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, you guessed it. It's time to start building a custom exhaust system for the twin turbo 370 GT. As you would expect, with a build like this, you're not going to be able to buy an off-the-shelf exhaust system that's going to work. You could possibly buy an aftermarket exhaust system and then just modify it to couple it up to the downpipes from the turbos on my build, but it won't really work exactly with what I want. And plus the cost of aftermarket exhaust systems, they're substantially expensive, shall we say. And at least building a custom exhaust system myself, I can tailor it to exactly my own needs, which means I can make it as quiet as I want, I can make it as loud as I want. I don't have to struggle with fitment issues. I can sort all my own fitment and everything out myself. And if something's crap, rattles or whatever, I've only got myself to blame. So I've assembled a few bits and pieces here just on the bench, just to kind of show you guys some of the bits and pieces that are going to go into it. It's all 3-inch stainless. I've got a heap of Mandrel bends, a heap of V-bands, a bit of straight pipe. I've got other lengths of straight pipe around. Catalytic converters, some large flex joints and some small flex joints. That's where I'm going to start. Obviously I need more than this. I'm going to be fitting resonators and mufflers to the vehicle because I do want it to be nice and quiet. I don't have those yet, reason being I'd like to wait and start building the system and see exactly how much room I've got before I go buying stuff that may not fit when I get up to that point. Particularly with the resonators and mufflers, I want to fit as large a unit as I can in the available space that I have. Now, I've been having a bit of a look over the vehicle, and there's a possibility when I get to the back of the car, which is just in front of the rear sway bar, I may have to neck down to 2.5 inch, just because the clearance underneath the rear axle assembly is very, very tight, and a twin 3-inch exhaust is a big ask to get under that area without ground clearance problems, and also looking really shit from the back of the vehicle like it's dragging its bum kind of thing. So we'll see. I'd like to keep the whole thing 3-inch, but at least getting like 80% away along the vehicle in twin 3-inch leaves only a small amount to come out in 2.5. It won't create any kind of a restriction. I just went for 3-inch because I have 3-inch downpipes off the turbos. I had some 3-inch cats sitting on the shelf, and I just thought I might as well just go in 3-inch for as long as I can. So I think that's the plan at this stage, but we will see. Everything's kind of open to variation at this stage, which is the nature of building stuff like this. You formulate an overall plan in your head, but as the build progresses, you often have to modify those plans to accommodate, you know, packaging issues and all sorts of stuff like that. So at this stage, I just thought I'd show you guys where I'm at, show you the bit of a start that I'm going to be doing on it, and just guiding you through basically how to build your own custom exhaust system. It's really, really not that hard. You can buy bloody really awesome Mandrel bends, which you can build the system out of. You can buy them in a whole variety of angles, and plus, as I show with the intercooler piping, you can modify your angles by cutting them in the middle of the bend and changing the way it sort of comes out and all that sort of stuff. So the saving with a stainless system is very substantial if you build it yourself, because there is a lot of work on the labor side of it, of building a custom exhaust system. It is very labor intensive, so doing it yourself, you just cut all of that out. Obviously you've got to have a welder and all that sort of thing to do it with, but at least you can, as I mentioned earlier, build something that is tailored exactly to what your needs are, and something you can be proud of, folks, and go, yeah, I did that. Isn't it great? Anyway, I actually have these cats already mounted up. The V-band that's on the end of these already mounts them onto the end of the downpipes. They're sort of set up, ready to go. Next thing that's going to be going on from there is these large flex joints, and then from there we'll start to run into some Mandrel bends. So that's the way I'm sort of starting with it. I'm just starting from the downpipes and just working my way back under the car. I am building my own X pipe for the system, and I'm basing it on these 45-degree bends. I like X pipes. I prefer the sound of an X pipe compared to an H pipe. H pipes are really simple to build your system. It's a lot cheaper too, because your X pipe actually consumes a lot of bends in the X pipe itself, and also the ins and outs of the X pipe you need bends for. But I much prefer the sound that an X pipe gives the system over an H pipe. You can actually buy X pipes online on eBay and all that kind of thing reasonably cheaply, but for me personally, I don't really like any of the designs. A lot of them are kind of mass-produced things, and the ones that are custom that are offered by exhaust places, some of them are okay, but some of them are really shit. And there are certain size constraints within this vehicle as well, because the X-pipe and a lot of this stuff is going up inside the transmission tunnel, so you only have a certain amount of room. So once again, building it yourself, you can make it exactly what you want. So as I say, I'll be building an X-pipe. X-pipe's going to be one of the first things that we do, because ideally you want your X-pipe transition and everything to be as close to the engine as you can physically get it. So if you keep watching, folks, I'll show you how to build an X-pipe built on 45-degree bends. Now, there are many X-pipe designs. This is just one of them. I know everyone has their own favourites, but this is what I'm doing for a few reasons. And the reason I'm settling on this particular type of design is for quite a few reasons within the vehicle, the sound, the packaging and all that sort of stuff. So basically what I'll be doing is taking a third of the diameter off on both of these pipes and then putting them together, so you have a 1/3 kiss on each side. It's a design I really like. I really like the sound of it. It's quite a solid X-pipe to weld up and to have. Just a personal favourite. So if you don't like my X-pipe, what can I say? Buy one on eBay. Anyhow, folks, I'll start putting some stuff together. So this is the starting position for the exhaust, folks. You can see I've got the cats mounted on here with the V-band on either side. Oxygen sensors mounted in them, just to give me a really good idea of level, just to make sure I've got the sensor level rather than just eyeballing the nut in the center. And then on the end of that I have the flex joints. Now you can see here that the floor pan of the vehicle starts to step down from this point onwards, so we want to try and get across into this transmission tunnel as quickly as possible. This is a standard size mandrel bend that I have here, and you can see with that on the end there, we've only just got enough room to get that in before we hit the point where the floor pan starts to drop down. So obviously we want to take all this off and move this back as far as we possibly can. I have a couple of pieces here that I've already cut down, and I'll just slip them in. Okay. So I'll throw one in there, I'll throw another one in this side. So you can see what we've got going on there, folks. That now gets us in a position where we're starting to move into the transmission tunnel here, which is where we have to put the exhaust system. Now this also, running these 45s on here, also starts to set us up for the X-pipe. So when the X-pipe is done, it'll sit up in here, because as I mentioned before, we want to get our X-pipe in as soon as possible, and this is our first opportunity to do it. As soon as we move in behind the transmission there, this will get us our X-pipe. So at the moment this is all just slipped in position, there's no tacks or anything in it. What we've got to do now is build the X-pipe so that we can work out how to transition into the X-pipe, because what we have here is 45 degrees coming in, and these are 45 degrees as well, but the actual merge is 22.5. So these are basically on different angles here. So I'll show you exactly how we get around that and get a nice mandrel bend flow from these pipes into the X-pipe. So the next thing we'll do is we'll build the X-pipe on the bench. Okay, so I'm set up on the bench here to start this X-pipe, and the layout I'm using for this X-pipe is the 2/3, 1/3 method. So what I'm going to do here with this pipe, it's 76mm pipe, let's say 75 for ease of measurement. So we want to leave 50mm on, and we want to leave 25mm off. So I can just do this with a square. Push a square up against it, roughly in the middle there. Come across 50mm and just put a bit of a mark. So we've got 50mm on this side, 25mm on the side that we're taking off. So all you need to do then, folks, is make a corner up like I have here on the bench. I've just clamped a piece of wood against it, and that means that our piece is setting even with the angle. These mandrel bends are really accurate that I'm using here, so they're all exactly the same size, and the bend is in the center of the length, so they're just a really good, easy thing to do this out of. If your mandrel bends are a little bit uneven, that's when you could get into a little bit of strife, but at this point they're all pretty good. So I just got a couple of bits along the back here, and now that's just for ease of while I'm filming this, just to rest the square on. So I'm just using a combination square here that has just got an adjustable ruler in it. So you just set your ruler up to, you know, whatever your measurement is there, and just sort of draw across using a Sharpie like this. So it doesn't drop down as you sort of go across there, so you'll tend to lose it. So you can just sort of eyeball it as you go across and mark where it's going to sort of end up. And then just join all your dots together, flip it over, do the same thing again, mark it where you run off your Sharpie or whatever, draw some dots, just put them together. And basically all you do, folks, you can see the dots that are along there. I'll just join a whole heap of them up with me epoxy texture here that looks like it's running out of ink. So basically what you can do, folks, if you can just cut that off with a handheld grinder, and then just file it all flat, and you know, and then get it together. The main thing is they both got to be really even with each other in order for you to get that really right. I'm not going to use a handheld grinder, folks. I just thought I'd show you that just because, you know, it's a real easy for people who don't have the equipment to do these things in any other way. And believe me, there's nothing wrong with using a handheld grinder to cut that. I've certainly done it that way in the past, but I'm just going to go over and cut it on my bandsaw. I don't have the capacity with my pull down bandsaw to cut something like this. It's not big enough. So what I've done is I've set up a fence on my small hobby upright bandsaw, and I'm just going to use that to cut it off. I do run a bimetal blade in the hobby bandsaw, so it can do stainless kind of stuff, and it's ideal for this sort of thing. So we'll go over to the little hobby bandsaw and we'll just cut this off on that. So you can see what I've got going on here, folks, just with a little hobby bandsaw. I've just got a bit of aluminium here just clamped on the side of it, just to give me something to run this piece along. And I'll just carefully run this piece along through the blade. It'll sit there nice and flat, and it's just set up to copy that line that we've got there. So that when we finish, we've got 50mm on each one. So we'll have 100mm wide in the middle of our X, with the 75mm pipes running into that. So I'll start this up, I'll just cut this through, and we'll have a look at it from there. Rightio. Rightio, folks, that was actually the second one that I've done. The first one's here, you can see that's straight off they're both straight off the bandsaw. I need a little bit of a clean up, but if you have a look at that, you can see that they go together reasonably well, straight off the bat. So what I'll do now is I'll give them a bit of a run like that on the belt sander, get them spot on, and then we'll tack them together, eh? So what I was doing there, folks, was just letting them both run on the platform of the belt sander, just to get rid of all the bandsaw marks on the cut, which once they're all gone, I know that I've now just got a nice flat surface, and they should go together really well, which they do. They meet extremely nicely. I've just run the deburring tool around them just to clean off those dags on the inside. I'll just go and clean out all the swarf that's sitting there on the inside of them, and then I'll go and put them on the bench, and we'll have a look at tacking them up. So here they are, all cleaned out. They're actually pretty dirty inside. You have to give them quite a good clean out. A lot of the times when the mandrels put through them, there's quite a lot of sort of crap introduced to them, particularly depends on where they're from. These are actually Australian made mandrel bends, so they're actually quite well formed and well made, but they were quite dirty on the inside. Anyway, they're nice and clean now, so I'll just show you what I've got set up here on the bench. This line that's running along here, it's a line that is square off this front edge here that I just made with a builder square. So it's, you know, been put along here and then squared off up that way. It gives me a square corner, so then I can sit both of these hard down and then tilt it in or out until it is straight on that line, and then our angle, which it does, should line up perfectly. I'll just take you and show you over the top. So that's sitting in there dead square, so all our lengths and everything is all sort of perfectly square and parallel, and our joint is just really, really nice. So I'll throw a couple of tacks on it, and we'll take another look at it. And there you go, folks, one X pipe ready to be welded out. Not a bad looking bit of gear. It's what I want, and it was pretty cheap. I think these bends cost me about 30 bucks each, so that's 60 bucks for a 3-inch X pipe in the configuration that I was after. Not just some pressed piece of crap, you know. That's what I wanted, and that's exactly what I've got. So I guess the next thing to do is set it up for purging, and we'll just weld around that. Fantastic. Purge is now on, folks. It's been running for quite a few minutes with the gas running through it. I'm just about ready to start welding it. I might turn the camera off while I'm welding it because the camera's nearly out of battery, and I'll weld it up and just give you a bit of a look at it. So she should be a nice thing. Alright, I'll be back when it's welded. So as promised, folks, here's our X pipe all welded out. Turned out very nice. Very, very happy with it indeed. So all purged, very nice. Ready to start fitting in the system. I've dropped a couple of marks on here. A couple of Sharpie marks. Just lightly there. I think I'm going to cut this off here and then put a 22.5 degree angle on there. What I've got here is another 45. You can see so far I've just been using all 45s. So here's a 45 that's been cut in half, and when that joins onto a straight piece, that gives you an angle of 22.5 degrees. Now what that'll do is, this is an angle of 22.5 degrees, but with the existing 22.5 degrees from half this 45 on the X pipe, that gives you this an angle of 45 degrees. So this will meet up with the 45-degree pipes coming from the engine. And also, if you turn them the other way, like so, they will go you back to straight. So I think that's what, all I've got to do is juggle this distance. By moving that up and down will bring these closer or wider apart if I have to extend them. So I think that's what the go will be, is a 45 cut in half on one end to go straight, and then that'll run into probably the resonators, and then turn the other way. 45's turn the other way, or sorry, 22.5's turn the other way to run into the 45s off the engine. But anyway, I'll work all that out, and once I get it all sort of finalised and get some cuts made, I'll fill you right in with an explanation with something you can actually look at, so it'll all gel real quick. Awesome, going very well. Righto folks, I've made a few cuts. I've got this all worked out to exactly what I want to do with it. As I mentioned, this is one of my half 45s, so 22.5 degrees, sliced in half there. I've cut the X-pipe back as far as I can along this leg so I can still get in to weld it. Just because I want to keep this as compact as possible in the area leading up to the X-pipe. Now, I do have extra length on the pipes coming from the engine, but they are on this 45 degrees, and these being on basically 22.5, you can see any length on these pipes here extends further than length on these pipes here. So 100mm of this will create an overall length that's longer than 100mm of this, just because the increase in bend radius. So as I mentioned, by cutting these pipes here, let's assume that's our center line, by cutting this pipe here to 22.5, that gives you an effective angle of 45 degrees, because that, assuming that's our center line. By welding these together, it will allow us a beautiful line-up with our engine pipes. And as I mentioned on the other end, I'm about to transition this into a couple of resonators. So we'll do the opposite there. We'll just spin them that way, give us a straight pipe like I demoed just before. So now I've just got to tack these in position. So what you need is a flat surface, because as you can see here, if you roll this, if you raise or lower that, it changes the angle on here. Now, I built this bench and I know that it's dead flat, so I can use it to give me a location for these, because I know that, you know, as I said, it's a flat surface, so that whatever I build on the bench here, when it comes off, it will be on a flat plane, which obviously you don't want to be building something and have friggin' horrible twists and crap in it. Then you've got to try and get it on the car and it doesn't line up with anything, and one pipe's high and one pipe's low, and you know, you got to start bodging shit and playing with all crappy angles, which is why you need a good flat surface to do all your welding on. I obviously don't have a welding table because it's not a major part of what I do. It is a part of what I do, obviously, in the shed here, but I'm not a professional, so I don't have a welding table, and I honestly don't have the space. So just having something flat that you can use as a reference when you do need to keep components completely flat is handy. Obviously, I can't clamp things down the way you would with a welding table. If I get desperate, I do sort of set up a half-ass welding table just on a, you know, another sort of portable table, just by laying pieces of steel across and throwing tacks on and clamping them and things like that. But I just literally don't have the space. So all I'm getting at, flat surface. That way, whatever you build on it comes off flat, you know, makes it nice and easy to work with. So what I'll do here, I'll get these two pieces tacked on. Then I'll go and check them on the car, weld them out, then we'll cut them off to their appropriate lengths, and then weld them onto the engine pipes of the car. So then this section will become one piece with the stuff that's on the car. So I'll get some tacks on these, and we'll just keep moving forward. Right, folks, you can see our pipe is it's now welded out, looking very nice. So that's the shape that we have there. So now we have an effective 45-degree angle coming off the front of the X pipe there. And what I'm going to do is I will take this over to the vehicle and I'll show you the layout and I'll show you the method that I'm using to build this section of the exhaust to keep it parallel, straight, square, centered. Just so that's something that you can copy if you're ever in a situation where you need to do this, so you don't have to worry about buggering things up. It's pretty much just a foolproof way of doing stuff. It's very methodical and you guys will be absolutely sweet following it. So we'll go over to the car, or under the Skyline, and we'll have a bit of a look. So that's the underneath of the car there, folks, where the flex joints go on. Now the flex joints run completely in line with the cats, so there's no point in leaving the flex joints on while I work this stuff out. So what you've got to do here is you've just got to get this distance from the outside to the outside of the two cats, because this isn't a slip joint in relation to the exhaust pipe. It's basically a butt weld. The flex joints do slip over, but they slip over either side of a pipe. So the flex joints have a slip joint in them, but this is the same size as your 3-inch exhaust pipe or whatever exhaust pipe you're using. So as I say, get your outside measurement. Here it's 708 millimeters. And what we're going to do is we're going to transfer that down onto the ground under the car. And from here, we're going to work out the exhaust system. So what I have there, folks, is I have a line here and a line here. They are 708 millimeters apart to the outside, which represents the layout for the cats under the vehicle there. Now, I'm just using the piece under the bottom of my hoist that all the cables and everything go to, just as something to start my position here. You could put a piece of wood on the ground, you could put a piece of steel on the ground, anything. Now I've used a builder square to just square a line out from those two marks, which is just here. That's the square there that I've used. So now that I have these squared off lines coming off the front, I've then split that measurement in half and I have a squared up center line coming through the middle. So what I'm going to do now is position the X pipe on top of everything else. Then we're just going to transfer some measurements and some marks down. Alright, so I'll just go down to the ground, folks, so I can do this. Hopefully I won't drift away from the audio because I don't have a mic on me. I'm only using the mic on the camera. So you can see here we've just butt up against the steel or the timber or whatever you've got there. Butt up against there. That'll get you your angle correct in that position. This is probably not the ideal thing. Something taller would probably be better to get you a better representation of the angle, which I may actually do just for myself, so I don't bugger myself up here. What will I put down there? There you go, folks. I'm just using a piece of wood just so that it's a lot easier to get the correct orientation for the pipes. I was eyeballing it in line, which is okay for me, but if you use something that's tall, as long as it's straight across, you know, whatever you've got there, you'll be able to correctly gauge the your angles. Now the surface that you're working on has to be really flat to do this, just like we were doing with the X pipe on the bench. I actually poured this concrete slab myself, as I do with everything, so I know it's good because I finished the concrete myself. And I have been right over this floor when I put the epoxy down and re-leveled everything, but it was all spot on anyway. So once again, you've got to know that you're working on a parallel surface, so you're not building a twist into whatever it is that you're making. So we'll carry on. So once again, line your pipes up with that outside mark that you've got there, and we're almost ready to sit the X pipe on over the top. But what you're going to need is something to support it on this end for you to mark it. So I've just got a piece of pipe here that's obviously the same size as this stuff, and I'm just going to use that to support the X pipe. And here you can see the reason for the center line that I've drawn there, because that center line locates the X pipe in the correct position, dead center of, you know, the vehicle in that spot, so that if there are any slight misalignments, this will help sort of correct that. So now all we have to do is line the joint in the X pipe up with the center line, move it forwards and backwards over the top of those two pipes on the ground until they line up perfectly, and then just mark the end of them and cut them off. This is a tricky bit, folks. You've just got to be spot on with your positioning. Having something that can help you is really good, which I'm about to do because I'm obviously freaking struggling here. But I'll get some squares that I can use to sort of stand up. Oh no, it's bloody collapsing! So you can see what I'm doing here, folks. I'm just making sure of our alignment. All of this, because this is very, very crucial, getting this particular bit right. It will take a little bit of fiddling, but mate, we don't care. That's what we're here for. So that's the position I've settled on right there, folks. I've just spent a few minutes you know, really accurately trying to define that location so that you know, there's really no chance that I've buggered it up, because if anything's wrong here, it's going to change the distance of those very outside pipes where they meet the flex joints, which meet the cats, and you know, that's a fixed distance on the car. You don't want to bugger that up. Moving this backwards and forwards changes that outside distance, so any adjustments that you have to make to these cuts is going to change your overall width at the front there. Obviously not something that you want to do. You've got a little bit of movement, you know, with your flex joints and all that sort of stuff, but the more accurate it can be right from the start, the easier it will be to finish up right without having to dick around with stuff. So that's my positions there. I'll just throw some quick marks on and we'll get the pipes cut off. So you can see the obvious benefits of laying something out like this, folks. It takes a lot of the opportunity for error out of the equation. You know, you're always working square and parallel. Whatever you're making's nice and flat. It just will help so much when it comes time to assembling everything. So I've got marks on the pipes that are sitting forward, the engine pipe pieces, and what I'll do now is I'll go and cut those on the bandsaw. Once those two pipes are cut, we'll then just sit it down here on the ground, rebuild what we have here, but with all pipes flat on the ground, and we'll check it all again. And there's our final result, folks. Other than a simple deburr, that's exactly how those cuts came off the bandsaw. No need to adjust any of the angles. They are perfect square cuts because all we've done is divide our angles equally. So we've started off parallel, we've come across 45, and then we've split our angle again with our 45-degree X pipe, which gave us a 22.5 degree finish. Added another 22 to bring it back to 45. So as you can see, we're square on that end up there. Our joins are square, our lengths are good, our width is perfect, everything is exactly how we want it to be. Now obviously this end here, this is where I'm going to run it back straight into some resonators, but as you can see, it turned out really, really good. So when you're laying out your exhaust stuff, if what you're building is going to be flat, find something flat to do your layout on, mark it all out, use proper measurements, use proper angles, and it'll go super smooth. And there's a great old saying, if you start straight, you'll finish straight, and this is the perfect example. So while it's sitting here on the ground in this position, folks, I think I might drag the welder over, throw a couple of tacks in it, and then we'll take it up to the bench and fully weld it out. There it is, folks, all tacked up, sitting on the bench, ready to weld, which is exactly what I'm about to do to it. I'll be back. So she's all welded up now, folks. I'm just laying on my back on the ground under the vehicle here, just kind of planning my next move. It's just slipped into the flex joints there. No, that's welded. It's just held up on this end with some cable ties, and as you can see it sits dead center of the vehicle. I've checked it off the chassis rails and the sill panels on both sides, and it's actually spot on. It is possible to adjust it just by slipping it either in more or less into the flex joints. Will bring the center section across left or right, but with them both in hard, it's pretty much exactly to the millimetre in the middle, which just you know, is a pretty good result. I'm pretty happy with that. So yes, you can see how it's kind of snaking its way along. So it comes down out of the turbos and everything. And we've got a V-band, then we've got our cats, then we've got a flex joint, then it goes along to our Y-pipe. And this is where I'll now put another set of V-bands and another joint up here, and then run through into some resonators where that heat shielding is, because that's where the factory resonators were, and there's heat shielding for it, but I really want to stay within the heat shields, so that's just something I'm going to have to kind of work on. So that's what I'm doing, folks. I'm just laying here on my back under the car, having a beer. It's bloody hard out spilling on yourself, and just kind of planning my next move. Yes. Alright. Well, so I'll let you know when I work something out. Alright folks, so I think I have it. I think I've worked out what I'm going to do here. I've just been doing a bit of a mock-up, as you can see up there on the car. I've made up a couple of mock-up resonators out of some 90mm PVC stormwater pipe with a couple of bits of cardboard tubing going through it and other bits of pipe just to sort of simulate the pipe running through there. And so it's kind of given me an idea on angles and ground clearance and all sorts of things that sort of helped me a lot with the design. I find mock-ups are always just super helpful when it comes to this sort of thing. That's the mock-up resonators I've got there. As you can see, they're just bits of pipe with some bloody, you know, crap running through the middle, just to kind of give me the angles and stuff that I need, and, you know, give me an idea on ground clearance and stuff, and what I actually need to do to get the ground clearance where I need it, and just how I'm going to come through under the rear sway bar and around the rear differential and all that sort of thing, because there are obviously ground clearance issues with stuff like this when you're dramatically increasing the size of the exhaust system compared to what was there at the factory. I'm actually going to step down from the X pipe. I'm just going to come out a little bit further, and I'm going to step down from 3" to 2.5" when the pipe work straightens out before it goes into the resonators. So the first section will be just a nice long straight run down each side in 2.5". The exhaust gas will have cooled quite a bit at that point, and will be less dependent on overall flow. There's no issue with 2.5 as far as being able to flow the exhaust to make the power that I want to make with this setup anyway. I've seen guys in the US with twin turbo systems running 2.5" full systems, you know, making 700 or 800 horsepower, no worries at all, and not suffering restrictions from their exhaust, apparently. But they're still making the power, so, you know, it's not an issue dropping down at this point, just to help me with things like ground clearance and clearance around the rear axle assembly. I'm also not a real big fan of the way a lot of the aftermarket exhaust systems for the 370Zs and for these things, you know, the bloody 370 GTs and the G37s and that go. How they'll have like a, you know, a big sort of a bloody cannon coming down here from the sides, and where they come through along here, there's real ground clearance issues. If you look at the cars from behind, they look like the exhaust is dragging the ground. Obviously it's not, but it certainly looks that way, and it really jumps out. You know, if you've got the boys in blue behind you and they see these two dirty, great big sort of, you know, stainless cannon exhausts that look like they're hanging on the ground behind the vehicle, they can see that it's obviously got an aftermarket exhaust system and all that sort of stuff, so they're going to tend to want to maybe pull you over and have a bit of a look, whereas I want this car to be very, very stealth. So what I plan on doing is I'm going to make up a muffler system up in the area where the large factory muffler was, and obviously the factory worked all this out when the cars were designed, that the best place to fit the mufflers and all that for maximum ground clearance and everything was in that position. As you'd probably be aware, a lot of the aftermarket systems do utilise that space. I think the NVIDIA Gemini and some of the others have their mufflers up in that position, but they're sort of quite a complicated thing. At this stage, I'm sort of trying to put together in my head a bit of a hybrid between something similar to the NVIDIA design and also the sort of angled cannon muffler design, somewhere in between the two, that cuts out a lot of the bends in the pipe work, but yet still gives really good ground clearance and doesn't look wanky. Yes, anyway, that's where I'm at, folks. I've been out to my supplier and I've picked up all the exhaust pipe and resonators and bends and everything that I need to do this all. A couple more sets of V-bands and whatnot. And I'm about to turn the mock-up into reality, I think, and just kind of smooth out a few of the last bugs as I build the actual thing. But having a mock-up, having a CAD design, which I'm a big fan of, the cardboard-aided design, is certainly a massive help in regard to any sort of custom work that you do like this. If you can possibly build mock-ups initially before you go making stuff out of your actual material, you'll save yourself time and money, because first ideas aren't always the best, and I often have what I think are really great ideas about things, and then when you put them into practice, you find that there are drawbacks that you haven't considered, even though at the time you think you're considering everything. When you actually build a cardboard template or whatever, it brings other things into question, and it certainly is a massive help when it comes to streamlining the build process of custom parts. Anyway, folks, just me crapping on, so I'll get into building the real thing. Alright, folks, I've turned the mock-up into a reality. And here it... Hang on, that's not it. Jesus Christ. This is our new piece. Don't know. You can see too much of what's going on up here. My camera doesn't bloody zoom back very far. It's not real great for close-ups. But you can see there where the two pipes come out with the V-bands on them. There's stainless bracketry holding them all up. Two 18-inch resonators, and this is our connection from the V-band. This is where we step down into the 2.5-inch pipe and have a V-band join, and then run straight down into the resonators there. So it doesn't look too bad at all, folks. I'll just wander around, see if I can get some... It's hard with the light here under the car, trying to get decent shots of stuff. So yes, tell you what I might do. I might just lay on me back on the floor. Have a bit of a look that way. Hang on. So this is a floor eye view of what we've got built so far. So you can see our engine pipes there and everything coming out into the V-band. We've got our step down into 2.5 with another V-band join, bit of straight pipe, two 18-inch resonators, and I've got little bits of stainless tube between that section. So this sort of section that I've just made up there can be taken on and off in one piece. The back brace is on the lower side of the pipes and the front brace is on the upper sides, just so that when you have it off the car or being held up by the exhaust hangers on the side, that inclination to rotate the pipes is removed. Whereas if you had a brace in the center on both ends, the pipes would still want to pivot around that center point, which could end up breaking the welds on it. But by putting one brace on the top and one brace on the bottom, you basically eliminate that, because one of them is always in tension to stop that rotation of the pipes individually. It just makes for a really robust setup to take on and off the vehicle. So that's what I'm up to. It all looks really nice and neat. I've got good ground clearance, and it's now ready for me to continue through into the tailpipe muffler area. from there, which I'm just waiting on the mufflers coming, and I'll start into that. So there you go, folks. That's the benefit. A cardboard and PVC bloody mock-up. It just gets everything really nice where you want it. Come up and show you the ground clearance. You can see the underside of the vehicle there. We've got nothing sort of hanging down anywhere. Part of the reason I went to 2.5, and I've actually humped it up slightly here. Not sure if you can tell that it sort of moves up slightly here. That's so that when our V-bands are on, which it brings the V-bands, the 2.5-inch V-bands come down slightly more than the outside of the 3-inch pipe. And also your resonators, they're about 4-inch externally. So if you had a 3-inch pipe, the resonators would be even larger. And to keep the resonators above the floor pan, or very close to it, it's just, you know, that's just how I did it, and it's worked really well. So I've got good ground clearance everywhere. It's all pretty good, and yeah, I'm very happy with how it's all sort of turned out and everything. Very happy indeed. Be happier if my camera would focus a bit better, but you get it, folks. It's all looking pretty nice. So, yeah. Hope you like how my exhaust system's going so far, folks. Because personally, I'm pretty happy with it. So I think I'll leave this video here, folks. It's probably already long enough to bore the absolute crap out of you anyway. Since I'm waiting on all my muffler and tailpipe stuff, I might as well do a separate video on the muffler and tailpipe setup and everything. So I hope you guys like this video. The whole point of which was just to show you that there's no voodoo art and voodoo magic in making an exhaust system up for a car, even one as nice as this. It's just a matter of being quite methodical in the process of laying out the system, having a few tools, having the time to do it, and you know, being able to weld is probably one of the big things. Look, even if you can't weld and you have a welder of some sorts, you would be able to still cut the pipe, tack it all together, and take it to someone to get them to weld it all up for you. That will be a huge saving, because a big bulk of custom exhaust cost is the time factor for planning out the system and actually designing it. So even if you can't properly weld and are capable of just tacking pipes together, you could cut and build the system, have it all tacked together, and then just take it to someone to weld it all for you. It just gives you options, folks, so you're not stuck to putting up with either your standard exhaust system or paying an absolute fortune for something that's a little bit substandard. Particularly here in Australia, we don't have the availability of all of the aftermarket exhaust systems that there are, particularly in like the US and stuff like that, and it is frightfully expensive to get that kind of stuff here. So to be able to make it up yourself, you know, it's just a real plus. So I hope you liked it anyway, folks. Thanks for stopping by the Aussie shed as always. Bloody pleasure having you here. Remember to like and subscribe if you like my content. Bit of a thumbs up. And if you're interested in how this turns out, remember to come back for the next one. Cheers.